Okay, element 1, the design features of language. So the opening slide gives you some key questions to ask yourself before and after you listen to the talk. Self-quizzing before helps you generate guesses, and that prepares your mind for learning. And then afterwards you can ask the questions, these same questions, but try not to look at your notes or the lecture slides or the video, and see if you can answer them in your own words with retrieval. So the key questions are: what is prescriptive and descriptive linguistics? What is the arbitrariness of the sign? What is duality? What is displacement? What is this idea of creativity? It's a special or technical idea of creativity. And what is the role of culture in language learning? What is stimulus freedom? And what is recursion? And lastly, so what? Why is this stuff interesting or important? So to begin, let me say that the design features of language show the complexity of the human mind. Language is complex, one of the most complex things in the natural world, maybe as complex as DNA, the genetic code. So the design features are a wonderful thing, an amazing thing, a profound thing. Language is a profound thing, and the design features show us that. So my main point: with the design features of language, we have power that separates us from animals. Even though we are animals, this ability that we have with language makes us unique in one sense. With language, we produce infinite communication. We travel through time and imaginary worlds. We put ideas in the minds of others. That is, we put ideas, and inside more ideas. So, idea no naka ni mo iko no idea o umikomu. So, buncho no naka ni buncho umikomu. So, by putting ideas inside ideas and adding new ideas to old ideas through language, we create arts, sciences, cultures with language. The talk today is connected to the reading Element 1 design features on the website, elementallinguistics.com. So for background, let's talk about some very basic principles. The idea that linguistics is descriptive, linguistics is not prescriptive. Nihongo dato gengo gaku wa kijutsu-teki de ari, kihan-teki de wa nai. So what does this mean? Well, like a biologist describes nature, linguists describe language. We don't prescribe it. A biologist doesn't look at a tree and say, this tree is wrong, it should be different. In the same way, a linguist looks at language and just tries to describe it, what it is in the natural world. So there are natural rules for language, and a linguist wants to describe them. Now, there are human rules for language too, and some of them are kind of wrong, and I'll explain that here in a minute, right? But just keep this idea in mind that linguistics is descriptive and not prescriptive. So for one example of descriptive linguistics, let's look at African American English, right? So in an African American dialect, someone might say something like this.
And she don't believe nothing I tell her.
She don't believe nothing I tell her is my imitation of that. And here it would be standard English. She doesn't believe anything I tell her. But with the African American dialect, it's actually following a set of rules, and those rules are correct within that dialect. その方言の中にその文章がその方言のルールを従っているので、so we can't judge that dialect as being wrong from the perspective of another dialect. So that's the idea of linguistics being descriptive. Here's another one. So look at these English words that seem to follow some sort of Japanese grammar or morphology, right? So we have the word pro-res for professional wrestling. We have the word cosplay. Here's the person doing Hadoken and doing cosplay. And then we have pasokon for personal computer, sekohara for sexual harassment, and rimokon for remote control. So these are Japanese words, and we can't say that they're incorrect. That's bad English. We can't say that. This is not English. It's really basically Japanese and following Japanese patterns, right? Here's some more examples. So, ake ome koto yoro. Ora, ake ome koto yoro みたいな感じの文章が、丁寧じゃないんですけど, it's not polite necessarily, but it does seem to follow some sort of Japanese natural rule pattern, right? Oha, right? And different ones like this. Hara hetta, right? For being I'm hungry, or hara tsue, right? Instead of saying muzakashi, you might say muzu, right? So these are not incorrect Japanese. They're just maybe not polite, but they follow rules. And so a linguist would describe them as naturally occurring phenomena in Japanese. So in general, linguists describe language. We look at the grammars of language and describe them. We don't use the rules of language A to judge the rules of to judge language B. So that's the idea of descriptiveness versus prescriptiveness. Now let's look at another basic concept. This is the concept of arbitrariness. So let's take a look at this idea of arbitrariness with the word dog. Here's a video of my dog.
Okay, this is your little friend. It's a real rabbit.
How do you say dog in
Let's
Japanese?
Make friends with the rabbit, okay?
How do you say
sit up,
dog
sit
in
up.
Spanish? How do you say
Spin.
dog in Swahili?
Okay, gonna make friends now. Gonna make friends with the little rabbit. Gonna make friends, okay? Give him a kiss. Oh no! Oh no! No! Don't hurt him! Don't hurt him!
Such a sweet dog.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! You're killing a rabbit! You're killing... Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! You're killing a rabbit! You're killing...
Don't do it! Stop! Oh my god!
Oh my God, that was... I'm sorry. I didn't realize that was going to be so violent. I thought my dog was nice, but actually she's a monster. So how do you say dog in English? It's dog. In Japanese, inu. In Spanish, perro. And in Swahili, it's mbwa, right? So arbitrariness. We link words and their reference arbitrarily. So we have a word, dog, and its reference, the actual animal. And this link is an arbitrary link, right? In other words, the word dog doesn't look like a dog. Perro in Spanish doesn't look or sound or feel like a dog. It's an arbitrary symbol. Kateni kigo o tsukutteru wake. So this is the idea of the arbitrariness of the sign from Ferdinand de Saussure. And it's one basic principle of linguistics, right? What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other word would smell as sweet, a phrase from Shakespeare, right? So now we do have these examples of words sounding like their meanings. For example, what sound does a door make when you shut it hard? Well, in English, it's slam, right? And we call this onomatopoeia, right? So what does a dog say? It says woof or bow wow, or the verb is bark, so it sounds like it. A duck says quack. The duck is quacking. I heard a duck quack, right? He quacked. Don't quack like that. So we can, and the word splash, right? In Indonesian, it's bur. So it sounds like the actual thing that's happening. And that's actually not common. Those examples of like these are relatively rare. So in general, the signs are arbitrary, right? Like the word dog. The word dog, inu, perro, mbwa, does not look like my cute little dog, Phoebe there. All right, so that's the arbitrariness of the sign. So these are actually not design features of language, but basic principles of linguistics that probably are helpful to know. So let's talk about our first design feature, which is duality, or in Japanese, nijusei. So we make words from sounds. For example, G-E-T-F-A-D. These are 5 sounds, or 6 sounds, I'm sorry. So how many words can these 6 sounds produce? What do you think? How many words can get, fad produce? Actually, it's quite a bit. So that's 64 words from those 6 letters. So this is the idea of duality, right? We can produce, with duality, we can take a limited number of meaningless sounds and combine them together to create lots of meaningful words. So for example, in English, maybe you've heard Professor Brown talk about this. How many words do native speakers of English know? What do you think? How many words? How many words do I know? What do you think? Huh? Right? Huh? So I don't know how many words I know, but native speakers who are highly educated probably know around 20,000 words. I hope I know that many, right? But there are probably over 1 million words in English, depending on how you count them. So with duality, it gives us the ability to take meaningless little sounds, put them together in many different variations, and create a huge vocabulary. Huge vocabulary, right? So that's the idea of duality. Take meaningless sounds, combine them together in different patterns to create words. And so we call this duality or nijuse. So that's one idea of a design feature of language. Let's go to the next one, displacement, which in Japanese is ten-i. So animals generally communicate about the here and now. There are some exceptions, but we humans can talk about the past and the future. What did you do yesterday? What are you going to do tomorrow? But we can also talk about the unreal or hypothetical, right? So if I had a time machine, right? If I had $1 million, if I lived in, the world of dinosaurs, those kinds of things. We can talk about these hypothetical, unreal, fantastic situations only because we have language. Language using symbolic structures, yeah? We can talk about things that aren't real or have passed or may happen in the future. Here's a really interesting question posed by this famous psychologist by the name of Viktor Frankl, one of my heroes. He said, live as if you were living already for the second time and as if you had acted the first time as wrongly as you are about to act now. So imagine your future. Look back at yourself from the future. See what you're doing wrong right now and think about how you would change it. Right? So maybe you were like, when I was in junior high, I should have studied harder, or I should have done this, or I should have asked her on a date, right? That's the past, but he's saying you could imagine the future and ask that same question about life now. It's kind of an interesting concept. Imagine you're living for a second time. In your first life, you made mistakes. Now you're about to make the same mistakes. You imagine the present is past. You can change the past. Life is short. You can't change it when it's over, so change now. Be responsible now. That's the idea. Kind of interesting. But we can do this kind of thinking through the power of language and displacement. Now, what about animals? Well, one example of displacement with animals is this idea of bee dancing, or so actually bees, when they go back to their home, which is called a hive, they'll spin around in different directions and tell the other bees where food is. So by spinning and dancing in a particular way, the bee will say, there's some food over here, you can go get it. And so they can communicate about something that is removed from them by distance. So remember, displacement helps you talk about things beyond the here and now. So the bee can dance a little bit, do some bee dancing, and tell another bee about something away from the here, from the present, right? When my dog barks, she's probably not barking about anything in the future or away from her. Although when I do ask her about her favorite friend, Fu-chan, she goes, even though Fu-chan is not there. So maybe there's some image in her mind, although she probably can't imagine where Fu-chan would be. Anyway, displacement. So The Invisible Man is a story that we can imagine with the power of displacement because it's not real. And here's a joke about the Invisible Man. A guy walks into a psychiatrist's office and says, I need to see the doctor. I think I'm invisible. And the receptionist says, wait 1 minute, please. She goes to the doctor and says, there's a guy out there in the waiting room who thinks he's invisible. What should I tell him? And the doctor thinks for a minute and says, tell him I can't see him. Get it? All right. So that's the idea of displacement. We can talk about things that are unreal, imaginary, fantastic, in the future or in the past, not just the here and now. Displacement. All right. Also, language gives us the ability to create culture and be creative, make music. So, little pause for some music.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine.
So language gives us the ability to create culture. That's amazing, right? So think about all the books in the library, all the knowledge in the library, all the knowledge that has been created by people in Japan, the Japanese culture, the tea ceremony, all of these things that are communicated through language. But we also do that with this idea of creativity. Now, there's culture, and we create culture with language, but there's also this idea of creativity in a technical sense. And here it is, right? So with language, creativity means we can produce an unlimited number of novel utterances. So in Japanese, I think this is called souzosei or seisansei, right? So animal communication is finite. Animals do have really some amazing ways of communicating, and we'll look at them in the next talk, and it's surprising, more surprising than most people think. But animal communication is limited compared to human communication. So when I say we can produce an unlimited number of novel utterances, which is just interesting by itself, it means this in Japanese, kagiri naku meatarashii bunchō o ieru you ni naru chikara, right? So I can always say something new or different, right? So animal communication is limited. Humans can always say more. They can always say one more thing. They can always add another phrase into a sentence, always say something new, right? So words plus word rules plus syntax rules gives us the ability to create unlimited novelty. So that's the idea of creativity, but here's the idea of culture. So the picture here is a picture of Jungle Book, of Mowgli, who was who was left in the jungle and raised by wolves. You can see that he's living with the animals and he's sleeping with the wolves, right? And we call this kind of child a feral child, or yaseiji, right? Now, it may not be fair to Jeannie, who was born in 1957, to call her a feral child, but basically from the time of birth till the age of 13, she was locked up and not allowed social communication or enculturation. And she was freed or set free at the age of 13. And at that time, she knew about 20 words. Stop it, no more, no, things like that. And by 1975, even though she had been she had been set free, she had no full grammar. So the point about Jeannie is that she did not have a socialization process, and because of that, her language was limited. So we need the society and culture of others to learn language. So this is the idea of culture and learning. And let's go on. So the next one is, based on this picture, look at those. Look what you see. What do you see in this picture? Well, my response is, I love the smell of freshly baked bread. And yet, I'm looking at tomatoes when I said it. So this is the idea of stimulus freedom. So I think the Japanese is shigeki hanno ju or something like that. So even though the shigeki, the stimulus of tomatoes is right in front of me, I can talk about bread. I can talk about something else. I can avoid the stimulus and talk about something else. So we can talk about anything even when the stimulus is not present. It's kind of like displacement, but another side of it. Right? So that's this idea of stimulus freedom, another design feature of language, which makes us different from animals. Right? And then the next one, which I think is the most interesting one, it's the idea of recursion, or in Japanese, hanpuku. So here we have a picture taken from a long time ago. I'm not exactly sure what the product is, maybe a milk or something, but it's got a picture of a woman on a can, and you can see the same picture of the woman on the can in the picture, and in that picture there's another picture. So there's an image in an image in an image in an image. And we can do this with language as well. We can put a phrase in a phrase in a phrase with kankei daimeshi, with relative clauses, for example. And so this is the idea of recursion or hanpuku, right?
アラマ先生の積み上げ歌。これはアラマ先生のくしゃみのハクションを食べてしまった猫のモモンガーが吸い込まれた掃除機のクリンクリンの中で泳いでいる金魚の金八を釣り上げた漫画家のドタバタからデベソを盗んだ泥棒のヒソヒソと結婚した卵のルンルンをオムレツにし。
So that's an example of recursion there. And also maybe you've seen these Russian dolls. That would be an example of a doll within a doll within a doll, so recursion. And in grammar, we have conjoining, which is densetsu, and embedding, which is umikomu koto, right? So a sentence in a sentence in a sentence, for example. All right. So this is the idea of recursion. This is the cat. The cat ate the rat. The rat ate the cheese. The cheese lay in the house. Jack built the house. But we can also say it this way. This is the cat that ate the rat that ate the cheese that lay in the house that Jack built, right? So this is the idea of recursion, which I think is really the most complex and interesting aspect of the design features of language. It's very powerful aspect of language that we can, and it's also requires strong or high level language ability, right, to do that. All right, so I'm done, and we finished at 20 minutes, which is good. So let's ask the so what question. So what? What about it? The design features of language. Who cares, right? Well, they show the complexity of human language. That's just interesting. Language is amazingly complex. Appreciate it, right? Right? It shows the differences between animal and human communication. And we'll see that more in the next talk. Where we'll be talking about the animal communication, right? The animal communication, right? And we'll talk about what else? How communication would be severely limited without the design features. So if we didn't have displacement, if we didn't have duality, we could say nothing. We would not have anything to say, right? So these design features give you the ability to have wonderful conversations with your friends and read wonderful books, understand amazing stories, and so forth. And of course, with the design features of language, with language, we create knowledge, we create culture, and we create art.